Welcome to BigCountryPreps.com. I'm Evan Wren, and this is the Capital Farm Credit and Wednesday Night Podcast, our weekly look at the area athletic scene, what happened last week, and what's going on this week. I'm here with my partner, Dan Youngblood, via Zoom. And tonight, Dan, we're going to forego our usual guests we have each week, and we're going to talk softball. We're going to look at our All Big Country Preps softball team, which was released over the weekend. Let me clarify. Not our All Big Country Preps softball team, but our preseason rankings per position. Each position where we ranked some of the top players in the area. We released that over the weekend. And also we're going to take a look at some of the top teams in the area. So tonight is basically softball night.
Yeah, and it's a good time for it. Obviously, the season started Monday with official games, and there's a lot to talk about. We've got a really strong area in softball once again this year. When you look at some of the teams and some of the players we've got, that's one of the things going through those position rankings, you start to realize just how much talent we've got, particularly in certain spots. This is about as good a crop of pitchers as I can ever remember. We've always had, one or two really good pitchers at the top and then some really solid ones behind them. This year, I think, you look 10 deep, you've got really, really good pitchers. And there's some beyond that didn't make the official list, but on that players to watch list that are really, really good pitchers as well. So, yes. Yeah, we'll talk about some of those kids and the teams, just kind of look ahead to the season. I think it's going to be a really fun one because, like I said, I think this area has just done nothing but improve in softball over the past decade or so. And some of these teams are really reaping the benefits now.
Before we jump into this week's show, we need to thank our primary sponsor, Capital Farm Credit, with offices all over Texas, including Stamford and Aplin. Buy your own slice of Texas with Capital Farm Credit. Together, we're better. And with that, we're going to take a look at some of the top players as we ranked them in the Big Country. We're not going to go through the entire list. We're going to give you some of the highlights per position, and we will start with pitchers, Dan.
Yeah, and I think if you start at the top, I think this one was kind of who everyone expected. When you look at Lali Gutierrez returning for Stamford for her senior year, a University of Texas now signee. She'll be pitching at the high D1 level next year, and she's gonna be fun to watch. She led Stamford to the state championship last year in Class 2A, obviously, and they've got a really good group back this year as well. So she's going to lead that group in their their repeat effort. But when you look at the pitchers, I think it starts with her, but you've got several others behind her. When you talk about a couple of really young ones, you got sophomore Josie Whitehead from Merkel, who was our number 2 pitcher, and then Melanie Middleton from Brock, who is also a sophomore, who's at 3. A couple of young girls who can really bring it. And then at 4, we had a local girl in Cooper Summer Simmons, who's maybe more of a finesse pitcher, but she's really good as well. But those are kind of the top of our pitchers list. But that list goes much deeper than that. There are a lot of really good girls on this list.
Yeah, we could have 5 or 6 players at this position, 5 or 6 pitchers that eventually pitch at the collegiate level. The top 3 are, in my opinion, shoe-ins to pitch collegiately, and I think we've got more than that. As far as Gutierrez is concerned, I believe it was me who warned you when she was a freshman, keep your eye on this one. This is going to be a D1. This is going to be a D1. She was already throwing in the mid-60s when she was a freshman.
Yeah, and there's another one on that list behind that group we just talked about. Hermeli Summersmith's already throwing 60. She was throwing 60 as a freshman last year as well. She's another one that can really bring it, and now just a sophomore. It is a really good young crop. I mean, even some of the other ones behind that, you got juniors. Reese Farrar, who pitched for Wiley last year, probably did a little more pitching than she expected to, because one of their other top pitchers hurt herself early in the season, and she did a really, really good job. Struck out 130 batters in 112 innings, which at the 5A level is pretty darn impressive. So, but this is just a really good crop, and you can go to the site and read the whole list. But when you talk about those highlights, you're talking about some girls who are I think in some cases, potential all-state pitchers.
Girls pitcher's mound is 43 feet away. And when you start talking about, when somebody hears 65 miles an hour, they think, well, that's not that fast. That's not that fast. Well, I guarantee you from 43 feet, 65 miles an hour is very fast, and it gets up on you very quickly. And if you're facing a girl that can throw with any kind of movement whatsoever at 65 miles an hour from 43 feet, you can get hardball players up there, and they're going to have a hard time hitting it because it's equivalent of over 90 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's the point I was about to make. If you don't think that's fast, you should go watch some of these videos of baseball players, including high level college and major league baseball players trying to step in the box against some of these really high velocity softball pitchers and just see what a challenge that is. So I'm constantly impressed having played a lot of baseball over the years, I'm constantly impressed by the hitting, by these fast pitch softball hitters and the amount of contact they're able to make. Because I think if I stepped in there, it'd be one whiff after another, particularly trying to face something that's rising on you. That would be such a difference, that something you've never experienced before.
Baseball players have a hard time adjusting to the rise ball. And when you see a Jenny Finch pitching to minor league baseball players on her barnstorming tours or against major leaguers, she's feeding them rise balls because they cannot hit it. Baseball players don't believe that you can throw a pitch that actually comes up. And then when you put them out there and face them with, a rise ball, what do? They swing under it. They just don't. It's like an optical illusion to them.
Yeah, so. I always loved this kind of a guilty pleasure, I guess. I love the celebrity softball game that's part of the Major League Baseball weekend. And Jenny Finch is almost always in that game. And one time a game, she'll really let loose and throw one usually against a former major leaguer, and
embarrass them.
Some of the swings they take and the faces they make afterwards. It's pretty funny.
It's hard to believe how quick that thing comes up on you. And she can throw over 70, so that's really bringing it from that distance. Yeah. Okay, now we're going to jump over to the catchers, and we've got a quality selection of catchers. We had a number of we have a shorter list on catchers this year. We listed the top 5, and the reason for that is a number of our top catchers switch positions. With different team needs, you had some infield holes to fill. Some people moved their catcher to shortstop or second base, etc. So some of our top catchers changed positions.
We've also got several who would be our top catchers who play other positions that you saw on the utility list as well. I mean, they kind of spread out a little bit, but the catchers we do have, the thing that kind of unites all of them is these are all girls that can really hit the softball. We had number 1 was Kendall Daniel from Sweetwater, a sophomore who hit .612 last year with 10 home runs, 48 RBIs, was our offensive MVP on the postseason team last year as a freshman, which gives you an idea how good she is. And then our number 2 was also a girl who played a huge role as a freshman. And that was Merkel's JC Tumlinson, who also had 10 home runs, 56 RBIs, hit .612. So you're talking about a couple of really good hitters. And then behind them, you had Angelina Arriaga from Cooper at 3, who hit 10 home runs as well. So you're talking about three catchers with double-digit home runs, which is a really good number when you're talking about how few at-bats you actually get in a high school softball season.
All right. And with that, we're going to jump over to our infielders. And typically this is where you find the best athletes in girls softball teams. A lot of the best athletes, you'll see them at the shortstop, middle infield positions. And this year it's no exception. We've got a bumper crop of great athletes in the middle of our infield, and great traffic on the website for this grouping here, because there's a lot of interest in the athletes that are listed.
Yeah, and this year's group I thought was really interesting because it was a pretty good mix of those girls you talk about who were like those really good athletes that are playing middle infield positions, particularly shortstop. And then with those girls, you had a pretty solid mix of slugging first baseman, which actually our top pick was one of those, was a home run hitter, and that's Kalia Kemp from Cooper, who does some pitching and plays first base for him. Last year had an area high 16 home runs and 51 RBIs. In just 130 plate appearances. She was a girl who I saw quite a bit last year with a .956 slugging percentage in the postseason, but one who really, when she steps to the plate, she's got a chance to put it out of the yard just about every time she steps to the plate. She's one that the teams really didn't want to pitch to if they didn't have to by the end of the season. So she was our number 1 just with what she did at the plate. And then behind her was, I thought, an interesting case was Maddie Kirksey, who's been a catcher to this point. She's a senior for Clyde. This year, out of need, they switched her to shortstop. Which tells you the type of athlete she is, that she can make that transition, that they feel that she gives her the best chance at that shortstop position. But she's another one who is really in that spot because of her bat. She hit .648 last year, 24 doubles, 6 home runs, 47 RBIs, 43 runs with just 3 strikeouts all year.
And she certainly would have been one of our top catchers had she not switched.
Yeah, no question.
And then at number 3, we've got Lelona Aplin of Stamford, a shortstop who hit .479 with 8 doubles, 11 triples, 7 homers, and 53 RBIs. She was one of the biggest offensive contributors from that state championship team. It's not all about Citlali Gutierrez. I mean, they have a number of quality players behind her, and you would have to.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good team up and down. And the thing I think that people will notice pretty quickly is how many of those girls from last year's state team are back this year. And Aplin is one of those that is a big time player for them. The one thing they're going to have to worry about this year, not necessarily worry about, but one thing they're going to have to deal with this year is Lelona may be on a long basketball playoff run with how good this Stamford girls team is. So
likely will be.
She may not join the softball team for a few more weeks, but when she does, she will definitely make an impact. And then behind her, we'll go to the top 5. At number 4, you had Mallory Kern, another one of those first basemen who really hits the ball well. She batted .556 last year, 19 doubles, 9 triples, which is a huge number, 3 home runs, 40 RBIs, and she was the offensive MVP of her district. And then at 5, JC Jefferson, another Clyde player, a sophomore there, who really was another slugger, 18 doubles, 3 triples, 3 home runs. It's just a lot of really good hitters on that list.
Year after year, we've got somebody from Clyde listed, on these preseason rankings, and then almost always on the All Big Country Preps team as well. It never ceases to amaze me how often and how consistently Clyde comes up with softball talent. They've always got some girls who can really hit the ball and be competitive. The distance that they go and their runs in the playoffs, how far they go, generally depends on pitching. And when they've got quality pitching, they usually go a long way.
But yeah, in fact, it's funny. We had the Colorado City and Mallory Kern and Jefferson Clyde back to back, but I think those two programs are pretty similar in just what they do at the plate. Those are two teams that really slug the heck out of the ball. I mean, it's tough to pitch through those lineups. In fact, Colorado City made it all the way to the region final last year before losing to Stamford. And then Clyde has had some really nice runs over the years when they've had the pitching to do it. So a couple of really good players. And I think one thing about Jeffers that's worth mentioning too is that's a girl that at third base, which is not an easy position to field, particularly at softball where you're so close, 2 errors all year long. So she's an excellent fielder as well.
All right. And with that, we're going to jump out to the outfield where typically we have a lot of very good hitting ball players. And right at the top of the list, Dan, Riley Johnson, one of the great hitters in the area. She's also a quality pitcher for Colorado City.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. She could have made our list as a pitcher. She was actually the district pitcher of the year in 4-2A. But Casey Rivera, her teammate, was on our pitcher list. She's also an excellent pitcher and also an excellent hitter as well. But Riley Johnson, when you look at what she did at the plate and in the outfield, she batted .583 last year, .651 on base percentage, 17 doubles, 12 triples, 13 home runs, and 61 RBIs and just 108 at bats. But she's another one of those Colorado City hitters that lineup is really tough to pitch through. And as most teams that played them saw, I think Stamford was about the only team that could do it in the playoffs, and that's because they had a D1 pitcher in Sitlali. But Riley Johnson's one of the big leaders that team has been for years. That's a program that's just gotten better and better over the last 3 or 4 years, and it's gonna be fun to see what they can do this year because I think that they've got a really good group back. And I'm sure they'd like to get another opportunity at Stamford in the playoffs if they can do it.
Okay, and then at number 2, we've got Cambrie Smoot of Jim Ned, who hit .455 a year ago, but she's also one of these outfielders that's hit anywhere in her area, she's going to flag it down. She's a very athletic, quick center fielder. She also has some power. She got some pop in her bat. She had 6 triples and 6 homers last year and drove in 36 runs in 80.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that. Yeah, you look at that slugging percentage, .987 last year. That's a big number. So she's a girl that not only hits for average, she hits with authority as well. She's at our number 2 spot. And the number 3, Briley Gilbreth of Coleman, a junior out there, who is another one that has big time power. She had an OPS on base plus slugging of 1,000, almost 1,700. So that is a huge number. Anything over 1,000, you're talking about big, and she's up almost at 1,700 there. But she's another one that had a lot of extra base hits, and she did her damage from the top of that lineup in Coleman. So also a good base stealer with 18 of 19 steals. So a really good player there. And then rounding up the top 5, we had Kendall Malayer of Brady, a junior outfielder there who was a first-team all-district pick, and another really good hitter, batted over 500 for them. And then rounding out the top 5 was Christian Everett, junior from Coahoma, another one with a big-time bat and defensively. She's a very good defensive outfielder. So a really good group. I think that this is kind of indicative of what you get with all of our groups. There's a lot of talent in the area this year.
And it's young talent. We only have 4 seniors on that outfield list.
Yeah, and that's kind of a theme you see. A lot of
juniors.
Yeah, and that's kind of a theme you see throughout. We've got a lot of sophomores. We had a lot of girls that made big impacts last year as freshmen or sophomores. And so these are some girls. Learn these names because you'll probably see them in these types of things next year, and in some cases the year after. This is a really good crop of young talent. And I think one thing, and I mentioned this at the outset when we were talking about the area, I think we've seen just maybe even an increased emphasis on softball. We've seen just over I think the last decade, 12 years or so, you've seen just a more depth in the area of teams that are capable of putting together deep runs in the playoffs. And it's just that you've got a bunch of girls who have really committed themselves, play a lot outside of the school system in the summers and the falls. And I think you're seeing the benefits of that. There's a lot of really good young talent in the area right now.
All right. We're going to take a look at some of the top teams in the area here in a moment. But before we do that, we want to thank our sponsors. First and foremost, Capital Farm Credit, who brings you these Wednesday night podcasts throughout the school year, also for the Love of the Game broadcasting. And our old friend Terry Slavens, owner of KLAX 93.5 FM out of Breckenridge, KATX 97.7 FM out of Eastland, Classic Country AM 1330 out of Graham, KWKQ 94.7 FM out of Graham, KROO 1430 AM out of Breck, and KWBY 98.5 FM out of Ranger. That is for the Love of the Game broadcasting. Also, Rob Durham, sales consultant up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. If you're in the market for a new vehicle or used vehicle, give Rob a shout. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever want to meet. His number is 254-559-2266. That's Rob Durham up at Bayer Chevrolet Buick Cadillac in Breckenridge. Also, Phil Hill of the Aplin Realtors Group, big supporter of local athletics. If you're in the market, give him a shout at 325-669-5153 or go to his website at philhillproperties.com. All right. And with that, we're going to take a look around the area and some of the teams that we think have a good shot at making a run, Dan. We'll start down in the 1A level. I think you've got to take a look at two ball clubs that are generally powerhouses every year. Hermeli is going to be there, and Eula is going to be another one. Those are two in 1A that I'll be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, Eula made it all the way to the region championship game last year before falling to Borden County 6-3. That was a team that had a really nice season. And then you mentioned Hermeli. Hermeli's another team they've got a really good pitcher back that gives them a shot in every game they play. And Summersmith, who we mentioned earlier, and then they've got some quality talent around her. They did lose a couple of the players that kind of provided some of their offense last year, but they should be a really quality team this year again after making it to the region semifinals. So I think those two are the class of 1A for the big country this year. But there's some others I think have a chance to do some things as well. Cross Plains is a team that you probably was worth keeping an eye on. They had a nice run last year and have some quality talent back again. The interesting thing about 1A softball and baseball for the last year, this is going to be the last year that's the case, is that they all play in 2A districts before being split into the playoffs. So this is the last year that'll be the case. They'll start next year playing in their own 1A districts in playing that way. So this will be an interesting the year of transition before they go to their own classification next year, which should be fun.
All right. And with that, we're going to jump up to Class 2A, where I think with Stamford back and Citlali Gutierrez on the mound again, and most of their talent around her back, the defending state champs have got to be the pick to get back to Austin once again. But there is plenty of good ball clubs in 2A in the area. So the regional tournament, the regional bracket is going to be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really fun region if you're a big country softball fan. Like you, I think Stamford has to be the favorite. They're the ones that did it last year, and they've got arguably the state's best pitcher in the circle for them in Citlali. But there are a lot of teams, in our region that they had to beat to get there. You talk about Colorado City, who made it to the region championship series. Forsan and Anson both made it to the semifinals. So we had an all big country region semifinals in that region. And then you had a couple others in Holly and Cisco that made it to the quarterfinals. So you're talking about 6 teams from the big country that made it 3 rounds into the playoffs, and then they kind of start cannibalizing each other. But this is a really strong region and classification for big country softball. We've seen a lot of these teams that even some of these that maybe struggle a little bit in non-district. Once they get to district and into the playoffs, they start to make runs. We saw in Region 2, De Leon was kind of that type of team. They had a really tough non-district schedule, and then once they got into district, they played really well. And they made it to the second round in Region 2. So this is a pretty good classification for our area, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, particularly that Region 1 bracket, because like you said, I mean, I think all of the top teams are from our area. It's going to be those teams beating up on each other to see who probably gets to play Stamford in the region final.
It's the same story in Class 3A. We've got a Class 3A region, I think, that is pretty well loaded. We got a number of good ball clubs. We have, of course, Clyde. We have Brock. We have that team out in Merkel, which is going to be very good. We've got a very good team in Coahoma, and we've got a team from Jim Ned that's emerging as well. It's going to be an interesting bracket.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of depth there of good quality teams. The one kind of elephant in the room is you've got a Jacksboro team in a holiday team that were both very good last year. That to get to where these teams want to get, if you want to get to a region semifinal, or region championship, those are probably teams you're going to have to beat to do it. But you mentioned teams that have a good chance of making that type of run. Brock's one of those that's always been very good in softball. They made it to the third round last year before falling to holiday. Kahoma has been one of the top programs in the area at that level for more than a decade now. That's a really good quality program. And one that I had a lot of fun covering last year that we saw emerge was Merkel. Unfortunately, they got stuck playing Jacksboro in the second round, which is a tough assignment. But that's a really good Merkel team with one of the area's best pitchers in Josie Whitehead. So that I'm excited to see what that team can do, because that's another one of those teams that had a really good season last year and brings a lot of their talent back. So when you've got a pitcher like Josie, you've got a chance to make a deep run. And then one team I know that you're a fan of is the Jim Ned Lady Indians, who we've seen kind of emerge under Coach Jones out there. So that's a fun region as well. And then Clyde, you got to mention Clyde, because Clyde's always there. So we've got a lot of quality softball being played in the area with those teams, with the Eastlands and even Comanche and some of these others that are kind of there as kind of dark horses. So I'm excited to see what our teams can do in 3A as well.
Okay, moving up to Class 4A, the Sweetwater Lady Mustangs were the head of the class last year and are expected to be so this year. But it is going to be interesting to see teams like Stephenville and Brownwood, who were young last year, see what they can do this year and see if they can take a step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about 3A, the race I'm excited about is that district with Sweetwater, with Snyder, with Big Spring, which are all quality teams and have been for a long time. One thing that's going to be interesting about the Sweetwater team is while they bring back quite a bit of their offensive talent, and they had a really good lineup last year, their top pitcher, Eliana Perez, has moved over to Big Spring. She was the son of a school administrator who made that move. So that was a nice ad for Big Spring, but that is going to be a tough loss for Sweetwater. So that'll kind of impact that district race. It's going to be fun to watch. But yeah, that
an interesting matchup when they come to town.
Yeah, that'll be fun, pitching against your former team and those sorts of things. And then Snyder is one of those programs that Snyder in the last 5 or 6 years has really become a strong softball program overall. And they returned. They were really young last year, and they got a bunch of girls back as well. So I think that district race is going to be really fun with those three teams. It was a fun one last year, and I think it will be again this year.
How does it look on the local front?
Yeah, I think when you talk about the local softball scene, it's a lot like what we've seen with the area scene, where our teams have just gotten better and better over the last decade or so. And really in the last 3 or 4 years, you've seen these teams reach kind of a new level. I mean, last year in particular, we had all 3 of our local teams make it at least 3 rounds deep in the playoffs, with Cooper having their deepest run ever, going all the way to the 4th round of the region semifinals, where they took Aledo to 3 games, had a chance to beat them there. They won game 1 and then couldn't finish that series off. But that Cooper team was very good last year. They just hit the heck out of the ball, and they're getting respect for it. They're ranked in the top 10 in the TGCA rankings at number 8, and they're expected to be to have another good team this year. And the same is true of Wiley. Wiley made it to the region semifinals 2 years ago, and then with a younger team last year made it all the way to the quarterfinals. So you had all 3 local teams make it to the region quarterfinals, and I think all 3 coaches have high expectations for this year's team as well with what they have back. So you look at Cooper, you look at Wiley in the Class 5A playoffs. I expect both to make good, solid runs again. They both bring back a lot of the talent that got them to where they got last year. And then moving up to 6A, it's the same story at Aplin High, where they have a new coach with Coach Reese retiring over the offseason, but they've got high expectations too. They've got a lot of talent back from last year's team, and that was a team that went all the way to the 3rd round and could have gotten to the 4th. They lost to a really good South Lake Carroll team in 2 games, but the first game was 7-5, a really tight game that went back and forth, and the second game was an extra inning game where they lost 9-8. So it should be a really fun season on the local front. I've had a lot of fun watching just how much you have seen these programs improve over the last 5 or 6 years. I've talked to some of the coaches about it, and they kind of talk about the same thing. We've just seen just the confidence level of these girls and the expectation level increase. I mean, I think when we first got out here, you'd see one of the local teams make a run every once in a while, but it wasn't necessarily as consistent as it is now. Now you almost expect these teams to make it to the 3rd round, and now you're seeing the team in the rankings. Abilene High has been ranked in the past 2 or 3 years. With the start they got off to a couple of years ago. Cooper's in the rankings now, and Wiley has that type of team too. So it's pretty cool. I've enjoyed watching what we've seen on the local softball front and the area softball front. You kind of start every year expecting these a few of your teams to make really good deep runs.
How much fun is a Wiley Cooper matchup going to be locally?
And that's what's cool is basically since they've been in a district together, it's been every year that's been really tight, really competitive where these teams, and you can tell the games mean something. That's the thing that's going to be really fun. It's fun with Wiley and Cooper this year. In the next alignment, you're going to get Wiley, Cooper, and Aplin High all in the same district. And these are three, not just good teams at this point, these are three good programs. So that's going to be something I think carries into that new alignment. It's going to be a fun rivalry.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be hard finishing third out of that group because that affects your playoff seeding, but there's going to be a lot of really good softball played to decide that.
Yeah. Fun league to watch. Absolutely.
Sure.
With that, it's just about time to wrap up the Capital Farm Credit Wednesday night podcast. But before we do that, we want to remind you that we have 3 separate subscription packages here at bigcountrypreps.com. We've got a monthly for $5 a month. We've got a semi-annual 6-month subscription where we knock that price down to $4 a month. And then we've got an annual 12-month subscription where we knock that price down to $3 a month, $36 for a full year of Big Country High School athletic coverage.
We'd also like to remind you that if you ever see a photo you like in any one of our galleries, those are available for purchase. You can purchase a digital download for just $7. And we also have some prints and keepsakes available. So make sure you check those out on the site. As you're scrolling around, you will see pretty quickly that we take a lot of photos from these games we're at. It's something we enjoy doing. It's something we're very proud of here at bigcountrypreps.com.
All Big Country, all high school, all the time. Welcome home.